welcome to day 2 of our Automotive 30% Club virtual conference. The film we featured just now shows how people working in member companies can become more involved in the Automotive 30% Club's activities. By volunteering in virtual school outreach activities, joining the Inspiring Super Network, or nominating your fabulous female colleagues for the Inspiring Automotive Women Awards. Please do join in with our campaign. For those who couldn't be with us yesterday and are joining us for the first time today, our conference theme this year is Change the Game. I'm Julia Muir, the founder of the Automotive 30% Club and Chief Executive of Gaia Innovation, the social enterprise that powers the activities of the club. I've written a book that accompanies the conference called Change the Game, the leader's route map to a winning gender-balanced business, and I'll share some content from the book later this morning. Our members will have received a free copy, but you can purchase one at a special discounted rate by going to our Automotive 30% Club website. I'll also provide more practical advice as to how we can become inclusive, and I'll run through the 6 steps to success to enable you to improve your gender balance to tap into superior business results. Then we'll have 3 masterclasses featuring senior executives that each cover 2 of the steps. The guests will share how they're addressing the steps in their organisations. Then our masterclass guests will appear along with our patron Christian Elverforce, the MD of Volvo Cars UK, to answer your questions about the content covered during the conference. So please do start to submit your questions now and at any point during the event. Now I'm very excited to be able to now introduce our first session of the day, because we have Automotive 30% Club patron Dr. Astrid Fontaine, member of the board for People, Digitisation and IT at Bentley Motors, in conversation with Molly Q. Ford, Vice President of Global Equality Programmes at our conference sponsor Salesforce. These top executives with global responsibility for equality, diversity and inclusion are going to share their thoughts on the importance of inclusion and the premise that values create value.
So, welcome Molly, and welcome to the Automotive 30% Club. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we are curious, of course, to hear about the technology sector today, specifically Salesforce. I think diversity and inclusion are really a strategic imperative in your company. It's one of your core values even. What kind of actions have you taken in a company regarding driving and becoming diverse and inclusive?
Thank you so much, Astrid. I'm really excited to share with you some of our programs. It really, for Salesforce, equality, diversity, and inclusion is a tone that was set from the top. Our founder, CEO, and chairman, Mark Benioff, immediately started the company with giving back in mind. And now we have these 4 core values, as you said, equality. And that really is where we can make a Salesforce that mirrors the communities we serve, and that our employees feel like they belong, that they're welcome, that they're seen, that they're heard. So that was really important to our leadership. And so I really love the tone we've set from the top. But since this is a conversation, I'm going to ask you, how are you managing the challenge of transforming a very traditional culture and established company that was established a long time ago? How to be more diverse and inclusive? How are you managing that transition?
Well, with Bentley being a 100-year-old company, we are for sure far away from being a digital native like Salesforce. But for us, we have run since 2018 on a clear path to transformation. And the topic about culture, becoming a winning culture, is one of our strategic pillars here. And in that, we really started to formalize our diversity strategy, and it's becoming really one of our core pillars. And with that, it's around the topic on areas like we want to inform about diversity. We want to make sure we include the colleagues, as well as to improve our environments when it comes to diversity talents, making sure we develop the people and giving them opportunities. So one major point for us has been, for example, as well to create awareness about unconscious bias. Because I believe many of the topics we see are not because of people in any way making it on purpose. I think quite often it was as well unconsciousness. And so we have, for example, last year had a full campaign for all of our managers regarding diversity and awareness training. But then let's move from these kind of strategic levels to the questions as well about on how do we track and measure that. I
Mhm.
mean, for example, the Automotive 30% Club is a prime example right here in the UK. Together with the team from the club, we have set out a clear strategic target, about 30% by 2030. But what do you do at Salesforce? What are your KPIs and measures?
While we've been on this journey of equality for about 4 years, having a formal structured program and plan, just last year we announced our aspirational goals or targets. And our metric is 50% underrepresented groups by 2023. That global metric is women. And then it also includes in the US, race and ethnicity being Black, Latinx, or Hispanic, Indigenous, multi race. And then we're also including dimensions like persons living with disability, those
Mhm.
that identify as LGBTQ plus, and military or veteran status. The latter, the persons with disability, military veteran, and LGBTQ plus, are really voluntary self ID metrics we're asking from our employees. And why are we asking them for that information? We want to understand the communities and how we can serve them. We're using that data to drive that. So for us, it's all about a data driven approach. And I
Mhm.
want to go a step further and say, this is how I hold my leaders accountable. We get in front of our leaders that have large organizations, 500 or more folks, and we give them a scorecard. And their monthly scorecard outlines the number of hires, attrition, and promotion. And so we look at their communities. Let's take gender equality. And what we want them to do is, in a business like Salesforce that's always growing and hiring folks globally, we want to make sure that they're really seeking out the most qualified candidate. However, go the step further to make sure those slates are diverse and we're actually looking for diversity. So,
Mhm.
really, that target now will start to cascade throughout the organization and we'll give leaders individual targets. But it's all about striving for a company that mirrors our diverse societies because, as you can appreciate and understand, our customers are getting more diverse.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about later, there's absolutely a business imperative here. This is not just because it feels good,
Yeah.
right? But you mentioned a goal of 30%. So a 100-year-old company, how do you do that? How are you going to do that?
But first of all, I think you're definitely there as a trailblazer, right? I mean, Salesforce definitely sets a direction here and a vision. So for us on the automotive world, 30% by 2030 is of course already a very aspirational number. But what
Mhm.
we need to do for that is on the one hand, of course, to make sure that we are moving and developing the people we have within the path to management. But even more important in our world is as well is to fill the pipeline. So making sure that as we hire the future talents, that we put an emphasis on these diversity candidates. And that's right now, I think, one of our major topics. So when I look into the new intake we just had on our digital apprenticeships,
Mhm.
60% of them were women. So it is about getting the potential in because we all know that getting through that path of career and development, it's less and less people. So you have to make sure that you have already a good base there. So it comes a little bit towards the topic what you mentioned regarding making sure as well that you have a diversity already in the overall colleague base in the workforce, and then to create the opportunities and the processes to make sure that of these colleagues and diverse candidates, you get the talents to get through so that as well on the management level, you have diversity in the future to an extent, as we said for automotive at the moment, 30% by 2030. But allow me a quick question there as well, because I was, of course, curious about you. So I had the chance to see one of your TED Talks, and I was really taken away by your personal story on how you brought this topic of equality to the attention at Salesforce. I mean, you were really the driving force behind this. Can you give us a little bit of insight there on about your own journey?
Absolutely. I had the opportunity and pleasure of doing a TED Talk, and I talked about one of my sheroes, and I call it not a hero, a shero, and that's Shirley Chisholm. And, this is a historic time in the United States, especially for women in government, right, with our new vice president. But Shirley Chisholm was the first woman, first Black woman to run for president. She ran for presidency in 1973. And while she did not make it to the office, she did break a lot of barriers, right? And so she has a famous saying, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I love that because it really is about making room and letting us in that space. And so one of my stories is how a woman who came before me provided a folding chair for me. To tell you the story very quickly, I had an idea for a women's summit, and I shopped the event around for about 2-3 years. And again, look at the Automotive 30% Club having this conversation. 2013, there weren't a lot of conversations around diversity and inclusion. And I wanted to do this amazing event where we really highlighted women on stage. So whether the conversation was around artificial intelligence or the climate, you look up there and the thought leader happens to be a woman, right? And so I shopped it around to some leaders, and one of our women leaders, one of the women who pioneered equal pay at Salesforce, said, let me have your slides. Give me your idea. And people always go, oh, you gave it away. Oh, you gave it to someone. But really, she walked into a room that I didn't have entry in and sold my idea. And more importantly, she kept my name on it.
Wow.
When she came out of that room, she goes, go, giddy up. And that led to conversations with our chairman and CEO, Mark Benioff, that led to the founding of the Office of Equality. And all that happened because another woman leader was courageous enough to give me that seat at the table. So and now I've changed that seat at the table to always say that as women and as leaders, we have a responsibility to leave the door open behind us. It's like our Vice President Kamala Harris said, I'm the first, but I will not be the last. So, which leads me to, I want to hear career advice from you, especially being in the automotive industry. So share a bit about your career journey and what's the advice you give folks on how to lead?
Oh, well, the one thing I guess that I can tell, or that I tell everybody, is you cannot really plan it. So don't be afraid. I think you need your own motivators, right? And for me, it was always starting off with curiosity. I was always driven into something new, to understand it, to drive the change, to make things happen. But then also the topic about passion. So if I'm curious about something, I also are becoming passionate about it. And that's where then really the energy comes from. And then I think thirdly, you need a lot of courage. And I think maybe I would consider you, myself, as well as the colleagues and the other patrons of the Automotive 30% Club, we're quite often trailblazers, right? Because we hope that the world we will leave behind us will be more diverse and more equal in the way it's run. So we need the courage as well to move, and the courage to take opportunities, and well, sometimes leave the place that you know and go to unknown areas and just have an impact. And I think that would be at the moment my career advice, to take the courage, to not sometimes be too self-critical, to not be afraid. And that's, I think, one of the most important topics for me, the lessons learned. And there is no golden bullet. So don't be afraid if you sometimes as well think you have to take some time out because of family or other topics. It will not break your career. It might even advance it. I mean, I myself took 8 years out of the industry to go back for my family, but also to go back to university. Didn't seem to have a real impact negatively on how I then developed afterwards. It rather gave me much more of a broader view and a holistic picture of the world. So again, that would be my piece of advice. Have courage in yourself.
Love that. Be courageous. And the reason why I really love is because even in my career journey, you know, an opportunity fell in my lap. I was speaking up, but an opportunity fell in my lap. And I'm always thinking, you know, gratefully, I was courageous enough to go, yeah, this is important to me. Let me step into this. I want to talk about another topic that I think is super important. That is the role of male allies, right? Because too many times we have these conversations around gender equality and the gentlemen go, all right, then see you ladies later, right? No, you don't get to exit. We need you in this conversation because disproportionately the leaders are men, right? There's been a head start in our industries, right? A head start of male leadership, right? So at Salesforce, we ask everyone to be an ally, right? So as a Black woman, I ask women to be my allies as well as men, but we say ally practices at Salesforce. Get ready for this. Allies ask, listen, show up, speak up. You ask people about their journey, right? During COVID-19, we especially start a one-on-one with an employee and say, how are you doing? No, Dr. Astrid, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Right? Listen with empathy and respect. And it's not the holiday table and we're debating like we would a football game. No, no. We're
Mm.
listening with empathy and respect and trying to understand the other person's perspective. Show up. How we show up for people is different in a digital world.
Yeah.
And then speak up. How we speak up for one another, advocate. Or my favorite is if you're in a big room and someone shares an idea and everyone talks over them, how do you say, I'm sorry, I think so and so had a great idea. Let's hear from them, or making sure there's opportunity.
Yeah.
How would you describe or tell me about a time you've had a male colleague or an ally support you?
Well, I think in both of our cases, in the end, it was the male allies that opened the doors, right?
Mm.
It might be different again for the generations after us, because we have hopefully by then paved the way for them as well to have sufficient female allies out there.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
definitely, it was the male colleagues as well as the peers that really gave us and gave me the topic about the courage to
Yes.
yes, you can, yeah,
Yes.
and yes, you should, and yes, go, right? So, or pointing out an opportunity which I would have never thought about. So, clearly, without the allies in the male population out there, we wouldn't be where we are. And we really need those
Mhm.
allies. So, I really want to encourage all the colleagues out there, all the male colleagues, please keep doing these good deeds. Please be those mentors to the diverse groups and candidates, and help us, right? Help us to become better companies and become better societies. So I think overall, the topic then comes back to what you mentioned in the beginning, Molly. You mentioned in the beginning the customer, because yes, we are great companies, but we are there for a purpose. And in the end, nobody better than Salesforce, right? To understand we are there for the customer, but because that's at the core of your company. Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe from your view a little bit on this customer side, on how does this diversity topic and topic about equality resonates then with your customer base?
Absolutely. I think our value of equality shines through in all we do at Salesforce. And while we have so much more work to do, right, to really build equality into all of our processes, we
Mhm.
hope that our customers are having a different experience with us. You know, our
Mhm.
leadership says that we're doing well while doing good, that we can still make a profit, but be great stakeholders to the climate, be great, you know, to the earth. We can be great stakeholders to our customers and partners. And I think it's really about bringing them along. And we both know that our customer base is truly
Mhm.
diversifying,
Yeah.
right? How do we speak to those customers? How do we sell to them? How do we engage to them? How do we meet their needs? So for us, that's super important. And
Mhm.
then let's not forget, if we go back to a McKinsey report on diversity matters, that
Mhm.
companies that focus on racial equality or gender equality, they can outperform their competitors,
Yeah.
right? And we still have a business to run. As much as equality feels good, we're still running a business. So tell
Fully,
me about how you feel about that.
I fully agree, because see as well from our brand perspective, we are selling cars not just to men. There is
Mhm.
a huge amount of females out there that are either buying the car directly for themselves or are actually in the background to decision makers quite often.
Influencing that decision.
Hmm. So, in that regard, our products and services need to be designed as well around their needs and their expectations. And who better than a female engineer or a female designer, right, to hit that mark on what the customer is looking for?
Mhm.
So, if male maybe decide on a car regarding the technical specifications, the engines, yeah, there might be another component on what is important to the female buyer or the female influencer. And that's, for example, it might be the topic about the materials that have been used. It might be about the functionality of the car. But to put yourself in the shoes of those customers, you need that diversity in your body, in your colleague group there. So that's why I think there is a clear business approach and why it is fundamental to have a diverse workforce. So I think we're coming to an end of our discussion here, which was absolutely joy. But I think we also agree diversity, inclusion, and as well the topic equality are fundamental to the success of both of our companies, as well as many out there. So thank you, Molly, for your time. Thank you for joining us here at the Automotive 30% Club.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much to our patron, Dr. Astrid Fontaine of Bentley and Molly Cuford of our conference sponsor Salesforce for sharing their views in that really interesting conversation. We're going to take a short break now, but please do post your thoughts about the conference on social media using the hashtag Auto30ClubConf. Join us after the break to learn more about the 6 steps to success and watch our first masterclass featuring our club patron Stuart Miles, the MD for UK and Ireland for CDK Global, and the Inspiring Automotive Woman Award winner Sarah Cox, Marketing Director of Volkswagen UK.